Hi, everyone. This is CricketSong with Inner Wisdom, and you're watching another episode of The Sacred Circle. Tonight, I'm here with my co-host, Renee Yin. Say hello to everyone, Renee.
Hello, everyone.
And our special guest this evening is Avalon Cameron from Avalon Spirit Odyssey. Is it spirit or spiritual?
Yeah.
Or yes,
it's just Avalon Cameron these days.
Okay.
But hello, how are we all?
Yay.
I'm excited to be here.
And we're totally excited to have you here. I know I was in contact with you for a little while before we could actually get you on the show scheduled that would work for everybody with children and work and internet issues and all that fun shit. Yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about Protection Magick. But before we start with that, I'm going to have Avalon just introduce herself in case you're not familiar with who she is, which I would be really surprised if you don't know who she is, at least in passing. She's out there supporting the pagan community, especially on YouTube. So Avalon, why don't you introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you. Hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Avalon Cameron. I have obviously a YouTube channel. For the longest time it was called Avalon Spiritual Odyssey, but I'm trying to tie all of my things in together now. So it's just Avalon Cameron. It's Avalon Cameron across the board now, and that's how you find me. I am a practicing pagan witch and an animist. I am creating the Bonestone and Earthflesh tarot deck at the moment, and that will go up for second round of pre-orders in November due to an astoundingly large popular demand call, which was fantastic. And I'm working with Anna Turian for that one. So Anna's a Wiccan witch, and so that's what we do together. I also host Spread This Witches. I'm one of the 3 co-hosts for Spread This Witches with Alora, with Alora Rain and Chase 2 Owls. And I'm on Facebook quite a bit, hosting in-person workshops. I administer a local pagan group here in Cairns, and I'm running the Elemental Witch page. I'm running the Australian Witchcraft group as well. So I'm literally everywhere. And on top of that, my professional services are I'm a spirit worker. I am a professional tarot and oracle reader. And I'm the witch that you come to when you have a problem and you want to talk it out. So that's my service to my community. And I'm Brazilian, living in Australia. So that's about it. That's my whole life story. I have 3 children. I should mention this. It's holidays here in Australia at the moment, and my little one's crying right now. It's beautiful.
That's what it is to be mother, isn't it, though?
It is. You have to multitask. I assure you they're fine. I have only been sitting in this chair for about 15 minutes. I left them a buffet of kiddie food and a movie to watch. And I thought that they'd be right for a period of time, but there's a little chaos out there, which is fine.
It is fine. And I love the sounds of children playing. My children are going to be 16 and going to be 20. So those little giggles and screams, we don't really get them in my house anymore. So
yes, they're very loud. Children are very loud. One way or another, they're very loud. And it's when they're quiet, that's when the worry sets in. Like if they're quiet, then something's happened. Something's going on.
Most definitely. I agree. So Protection Magick, that's what we're going to talk about this evening. And of all of you wonderful people there in chat, if you have questions, as per our usual policy here on the Sacred Circle, if you have a question that's related to the topic, then we'll definitely answer those first. So I guess, Renee, what is it? Capital letters are the easiest for us to find, maybe?
But I'll be watching it too at the same time and kind of going in the order we receive them in dealing with the actual topic, Protection Magick.
Exactly. Renee is our wonderful Miss Moderator. So yeah, in the order we receive. And the other thing I wanted to say is keep in mind that we may not ask the question exactly as you have it worded. We found that sometimes a few of you ask the same question, just worded differently. So we'll try to ask a general question that covers those questions that may be like grouped together for the same sort of intention. So Protection Magic. So Avalon, when you hear Protection Magic, what is the first thought that comes into your mind? What is the first image of, you know, what are we talking about, or what are you specifically looking at when we say Protection Magic? Did she freeze?
I think she's joining back in.
Oh, yep, she's joining back in.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened then. The lights flickered ever so much. They just flicked, and then my connection was lost. So there was just a little blip in the system there. So sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right. Of course, there's a blip.
Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, did you hear my question? You probably didn't hear my question. Okay, so when we're talking about Protection Magic, or when you hear the word protection or words, Protection Magic, what is the first image, or what do you relate that to in sort of like a defining way, or at least a way that we can all get on the same page as what we mean, or what you mean by Protection Magic?
What I mean personally by Protection Magic is the standing of guard, and the standing of guard against one's perimeter, the standing of guard against one's body, one's family, one's legacy, one's story. And it's the standing of guard. It's the protective shield of a warrior. It is the shield to prevent the strike, and it is holding the shield strong in your hand and understanding that you're in control of that shield and the placement of that shield. And so when I think of protective magic, it is that shielding aspect, and it is that guardianship aspect as well. I can do protective magic on my garden just as much as I can do protective magic on the boundary of my property, on my front door, on my children, on my person. And it's a way of shielding. And when I think protective magic, I'm not talking specifically about psychic attack or the protection against a curse or a hex. I'm talking about protection magic, protecting your home from theft, which happens to anybody, protecting your home from injury and illness, and taking it beyond just magic, and understanding that any craft, any practice of a witch needs to fit into the modern construct. And so there are modern woes that we need to deal with as we are incarnated here in this particular time in our Earth's evolution, and we need to deal with that. And as a witch, you deal with what's happening in your life, in all of your life, not just in your magical life, but in all of your life. And protection magic is one of those. I think they are one of the most baser instincts for a witch. Many people will learn protection magic, and from very basic grounding and centering of their energy fields, their auric body, all the way up to, you know, witches' bottles and hoard pegs and, you know, apothropaic magic and things of that sort. So, but it's for the mundane, and it's for the mystical, and it is a guardianship and a shield.
So it's definitely beyond just what I think a lot of people, or even beginners, think when you think protection magic. It's, oh my God, I need to protect myself from other witches or from negative entities, or, you know, malicious intentions. You're talking beyond that, just obvious, you know, I mean, not offensive, but yeah, sort of guarding, but beyond just that surface stuff.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. For the most part, you know, depending on where you are geographically speaking, and I can say this from, you know, from the perspective of someone who has lived in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, which is considered a third world country, and Rio has a weaving, an undercurrent, an underbody of mysticism there that is quite real and very different to, say, Australia. And that is the place where you worry about hexes and curses, because that is the place where people will hex and they will curse you, and they will tell you that they're hexing you and they're cursing you. They will tell you that, and then you know, there's none of this wondering, right? But here in Australia, it's a very different scenario. And so what I deal with here in Australia on a magical level is, say, the evil eye, which I just wrote a blog post on the evil eye. Protective magic is very much in the forefront of my mind at the moment. Oh, hello.
Yeah, so
Okay. This is Serenity. She was bound. One of them was bound to come in.
Hi, Serenity.
And she likes to say hello. Daddy, can you please get her some yogurt? Oh my God, it's the cascade of children. They've come to interrupt me. Have a sit down. Hang on, I'm so sorry.
Sure.
Just give me a moment.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So Renee, when you think of Protection Magick, what comes to the forefront of your mind?
Usually instead of being generalized, it's always usually event specific. So for me, when we're talking Protection Magick, I'm very like Avalon aspect. I'm meaning literal. I'm meaning actual physical safety. I'm meaning protection of my belongings. And before I evacuated from Hurricane Harvey, I threw a net so wide. I was exhausted before we even left to cover not just the house, but the entire property of the apartment that I was on, because we didn't know what was going to happen. And I'm not like sitting here tooting my own horn of, oh, it's because of this, but I think it at least helped was that out of the entire area that was flooded, our apartment was the only thing that was untouched. And we were by the creek bed that actually, I live on the creek bed that flooded the majority of Houston. And so it's just kind of like, you know, it's a really literal sense of, oh, it's not about, I'm worried about all these witches and pagans because I have a YouTube channel are going to come after me. It's like, no, like I don't want my stuff to flood. Like I want my house to be safe. I don't want people to, you know, be causing crime. I also have my front door warded so people don't knock on it in the middle of the day to ask me, have I met Jesus? Because that happened a lot at the old apartment, and we moved here and I did stuff to the door, and those people probably get really creeped out with the feelings when they even come to see my wipe your paws doormat. So, you know, it's kind of more, I guess it's more practical in that sense.
Yeah. And I definitely think personally for me, when I think of Protection Magick, I'm definitely thinking of wards. I'm thinking of shields. I'm thinking of practical aspects. But for me, I also think of the spiritual aspect as well. I think maybe it's perhaps the area that I live in. I mean, we have a very large, in the city we live in, we have a very large population from Guatemala, the Azores, Portugal. So they don't shy away from witchcraft either. Oh, and we have some Haitians population, because we were a fishing port, and we still are a pretty popular fishing port for our area. There's a lot of people that come here and have settled because of the history of this city. And they're not afraid of witchcraft. They will curse, they will hex, and they will seek out others to help them in magical ways. They're looking for that boost. So if I'm having those types of individuals come for readings, then I am just a tad concerned about what they might be bringing in, what their intentions are, because sometimes I don't really know them. So warning and that sort of protection for my possessions, for my home, for my space, for me personally, and the people, living creatures that live here with me, my children, my husband, my pets. So yeah, I think I'm looking at it from all different aspects as well. So I think we're very much coming together in a common sort of aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what? Oh,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So what works? What, I guess, I was going to say what works for you, but I mean, what is your go-to? What is the most prominent aspect of Protection Magick, Avalon, that you focus on for yourself? I mean, I know we covered like the broad spectrum, but what is it you find is maybe more prominent at this time when looking at the Protection Magick for yourself?
For myself, okay, I'm working a lot with the energies of the evil eye.
That's right.
And that is something that I'm quite aware of. And I can explain this to you in short, but I can also direct you to my blog post about it, because I have written quite it's my personal perspective, of course. It's how I see it through my lens. But as a person who is in the public eye, talking about something as sensitive a topic as witchcraft and religion, then I am exposing myself to a certain type of energy. And that's me personally. Now, as a conduit, I'm absorbing that energy and I'm taking it into my home, and then I'm basking in it in my home, for instance, right? Now, I don't hold the opinion that all people are inherently evil. I don't hold the opinion that there are just a certain number of people that can cast the evil eye. I think the evil eye is subtle and insidious, and that any person, no matter how good and no matter how bad, can have a moment with it where they are looking at what somebody else has, who they are, what they've created, etc., and they're very envious of it. That envy, it takes nothing for that envy and that jealousy to turn into some kind of bitterness or resentment. And that bitterness and resentment might never be spoken out loud, and it might never manifest into anything other than just a feeling, an internalized private feeling. But that is energy. That feeling that's coursing through your body is energy. And if you're feeling that and you're holding it in your auric field and you're looking directly at someone, that's sympathetic magic. You're holding that person in your line of sight, tapping into their energy and casting that out, whether a person is aware that they are doing it or not. So evil eye is something that is anywhere and everywhere, can come from any person whatsoever. We're all very emotional people. We're very emotional human beings. We have our likes, our dislikes, our ups and our downs. We have our good days, our bad days, and things like that. And that can all impact our emotional structure and our emotional stability. And it's in that line of emotion and then the potential to center on something and project on something. That is where the evil eye is really at play, right? And so as a person in the public eye, I have to be very careful about that. And this is not an opinion that I've necessarily always held per se, but it is an opinion that I grew up with and then I forgot about, and I have very recently, due to some occurrences in my own personal life, reconnected with. And, you know, I come from an all magic family, and so I spoke to my mum about this. And she's not the kindest person. My mother's not the kindest person. She's a very stern individual. She's a criminal attorney and she has worked in Rio de Janeiro for the longest time. She's an Aries, a triple Aries. And she is she's a very stern person, right? And she did not take kindly to me, talking about, what was going on in my life. And when she asked me, well, do you have this in place? Have you done that? And I'm like, no, I haven't done any of that, because I have personally become complacent. I have become complacent because I live in such a nice place. I don't have to worry about the things that I had to worry about when I was living in Rio. And I started to change my perspective on things in such a way that I genuinely believed at one stage in my life that if I held my vibration up high enough, that nothing could get to me. And that's only one side of magic. That's only one side. That's the visualization side of magic. There's no action in that. It's purely visualization. And so there has to be a push of energy in the form of action to direct that outwards. So it's part one of a two-part process, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I dropped off the second part process, which was the active process. Now, this is not to say that I didn't guard my body in any capacity, that, when it comes to time of Mabon or autumn equinox and Samhain here, and I do my yearly cemetery and ancestral offering, that I don't go in there with my headscarf on and my body protected and take salt and candles and do the right thing in that regard. So there were still protective measures in place, but protective measures for my home, for my body, talismans. I used to wear things around my neck all of the time without fail, I'd sleep with them on. Necklaces, tattoos. I can't remove my tattoos. I've still got them on me. But a tattoo, if you don't charge it, if you're not holding it there, and I'm just looking at my runics here, and if you're not sitting there and reaffirming the reason why you inked yourself in the first place and refreshing that energy that goes in there, eventually it's just a mark. It's just a scratch. It's a scar. It holds a memory, yes, but does it hold power? Not necessarily. Not anymore. Right. You have to keep charging things. I think personally, you have to keep charging things. And, and so the evil eye is what I currently work with. And to say that there is any one technique that I work with, no. I find that every situation is very different one to the other and calls for a different approach. last week I worked with the raven totem, with a raven wing, a raven skull, raven feathers. I worked with deer energy in my shamanic drum. I worked with the colors black, and I worked with green ants. And next time I have to do this, it will be a different setting, a different scenario at a different time of the year, different seasons, and I'll work with something different in accordance with my need at that time. But, you know, for me to drag out all of my animal ephemera in a very shamanic sense, I was working on something quite big, and I did so outside of my home because I don't do big banishings, wardings inside my home. It's not an energy that I contain inside my home out of respect for my family. But outside in my garden, that allows me to work really plugged into nature, I think, and it's a far better effect for me personally, who's a nature-based animist. So, did I at all answer the question then? I feel like I just.
I think you did. I think you did. I think you did.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's a big subject.
It is. It is. So I definitely resonate with much of what you just spoke about. I mean, the idea, and I really want to point out that I think people, witches, may forget, is, yes, thinking those positive thoughts, thinking the high vibration thoughts, focusing and visualizing on, you know, the higher vibrations without, I find a lot of people don't do the work, do the action. It's not just the thinking, it's not just the visualization, it's the actions that follow through with it. And I think you hit a really good point with that, because I think some of us, or many of us, sometimes we forget that. Like, oh yeah, I'm thinking positive, I'm sending this out, but what are you doing? What is the action in that? And I think, at least for me, my feelings, my perspective, witchcraft is doing. It's a craft. It's something you do, especially living in the physical realm, living in this world that, you know, the shared consciousness, the shared reality, action, physical action, doing something, even if it's just a gesture, really manifests that intention and pushes the energy forward towards manifestation. And I really wanted to point that out, because I feel like sometimes we forget things like that, especially in regards to witchcraft. If it's something we've been doing for a while, we may just think, yeah, I can just visualize it and it happens. Boom, it's done. Is it really done? Is it really fully manifested? Or was there something you could have carried it into and seen it impact better, greater?
Yeah. You got to put some heat into it.
Yeah.
That's how I like to see it. You can't bake a cake without a bit of heat, right?
Right.
So you got the ingredients there, everything's ready to go. You just need to add a little bit.
Do it. Yeah,
to get it to really cook and rise and change, and to use the baking. But you can use any analogy if you like. Basically, it's a two-part thing. You have to pour a good deal of energy into something, and that's across the board. Yeah. And one thing that your conversation just then sparked in my mind was that usually when we're going through a really good phase in our life, really happy time, things are going really well, protection magic is far from your mind, because you are basking in the glory of your achievements and the awesomeness that is encapsulating you in that moment, right? We all have these incredible highs where things are going so amazingly. That's when you do protection magic. Right there, because you've got something that somebody else is going to want. Somebody else is going to want that feeling, that accolade, that whatever it is that you are celebrating with a big, beautiful smile on your face, sharing on Facebook, photographing on Instagram, whatever it is that you're putting out there, somebody is going to want that. Whether it's maliciously or just kindly want it, they are going to want that. And that want, it takes nothing for that want to turn into an obsessive thing, even for a microsecond. It takes nothing. It really takes nothing. It takes a bad night's sleep and a bad day all rolled into one for you to look at something and just feel a little bit resentful of it, I feel resentful towards other people. I feel resentful towards, things at particular times. It's a passing thing, but depending on where my state of mind is, sure, I felt jealousy, I feel passion, I feel dislike, I feel disgruntled, I feel appalled, I feel those things myself. And part of that protective magic is, you know, containing yourself, understanding how far your emotions are outpouring, and also understanding that at the high points of your life, at those beautiful high points, that's when you cast out your protections, because A, your energy is really high, right? Your energy is really high. It's right up there, you know, it's really high. And B, you're a beacon of light. You're a beacon of light. You're shining really brightly, and people will be attracted to your flame. This is not to say that just because you're shining brightly that people are going to just like try to dull your flame. But you do it, you shine a torch in the light. Bugs do come to fly around it because everyone wants a little bit of light, right? Everyone wants to see a little bit of direction. So it seems very common sense to me, but it might not necessarily be common sense to another person. And, you know, protection magic, you have to create your parameters for yourself, and you have to draw certain lines. You know, how far are you going to take it? How far do you think you need to take it? Is it something that you do just personally? Is it something that you do for your home? Do you go out of your way to protect family members unknowingly? Because there's this thing, right? In the pagan community, you don't cast magic against someone unless they're aware of it. Even a healing needs to be done with permission. Where we come from, that's not a thing, you know. If you operate from a place of love, genuine familial love, like for my family, for instance, then I'm quite happy to operate on their behalf, whether they know or not. But that's another thing. So you have to draw your parameters. You have to, you know, figure out exactly how it is that you feel about protection magic, what it means to you, and how you would like to personally conduct it, and the parameters therein. So it's important to have a think about it at the very least, and understand that it's quite a big subject.
I definitely agree with you. And I definitely agree. The idea that when you are in that high level, when your energy is raised because you're reaping rewards or the manifestations of what you've created, and it's this wonderful feeling of success and accomplishment, definitely the best time to do protection magic, of course. But you're right. Are we really thinking about that when we're, you know, driving around in our new car and eating chocolate cake and having fun with winning the lottery and getting that job we wanted or whatever it is? We're not thinking. I know I'm not thinking of, you know, oh shit, got to cast that, you know, make sure my wards are in place, because I'm not thinking that. But I agree. That's the perfect time. The momentum, that energy, you've built it up. It's at its peak. Do your thing.
That's exactly right. Yep. Yeah. Yes. I firmly believe that. And it's something, and if I'm being entirely truthful, it's something that I completely forgot about. Like, I really did forget about it. I live in such a lovely place that I haven't had to think about that sort of thing for a very long time. When I grew up, protection magic is the first thing that you see. It's the first thing that you witness being done. You know, it's the first thing that somebody will teach you. They won't say, this flour is for love, salt is for protection, onions are for protection, garlic is for protection. This is why we put it in all of our fucking food, because it's for protection. It protects the inside of your body, it protects the outside of your body. And it's the first thing that they tell you. It's the first thing that they tell you. I mean, I look back on my younger self and I feel a little bit sorry for me, because I was that kid that went to school with these garlands of things around my neck, right? And like Lágrimas de Nossa Senhora, just, you know, the tears of our Sacred Lady in their little seedling forms dangling around my neck, wearing the color green when everybody else was in school uniform, and just, you know, just listening to it, you know, just listening to the, you know, why are you dressed like this? What's that around your neck? That smells, and, you know, and so on and so forth. And I think that had it not been for that, just that little bit of difficulty as a child, I would not be as resilient as I am now. Nowadays, people could say whatever they want to me. It does not, it just doesn't get in. It doesn't affect me. It's like, it just doesn't affect me. That's protective magic. See, the protection that I got as a child is now helping me as an adult.
Right. Exactly. Renee, we're at the halfway mark. Any questions up to this point?
There was one way at the top, and it was about Golden Dawn and some, I don't know if we could answer it. It was something really ceremonial. I'm more familiar with Solomon's seal, so I think that would be a question I would go back and save for a chat with Joe. If you guys talk about protection, like that's like, it's out there. So.
Okay. So.
Really thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I'm not versed in ceremonial magic, Golden Dawn.
No. I'm the dirty low magic person.
Dirty.
I do street magic.
Down and dirty.
Down and dirty.
Down and dirty.
That's right.
Hey, so yeah, down and dirty is good. That yeah.
Gets it done, doesn't it?
No kidding. No strings. That's it. Just get it. Yeah.
It's the job done. It's just not pretty. Well, it is pretty to me these days. Like, there's nothing quite like, as Renee was saying before, a brain in a jar of salt with some nice.
Oh yeah, right.
It's a beautiful visual. Not for everybody though. That's the stuff of horror movies for the most part, isn't it?
Yeah.
People know what
you become desensitized as a witch, right? You discern a horror from beauty quite easily, and for the most part, people still have a squeamish nature towards bones. And this is relevant to the topic, of course, because bones can be incredibly protective, particularly from an ancestral perspective. Now most people wouldn't hesitate to collect a bone, just a white, a sun-bleached bone. Look at it. Oh, that's cool. Or a shell, for instance, which we know is bone. Or, a carcass of a really cool cicada or something like that. You wouldn't hesitate. It's beautiful. Snake skins are collected, and they're not too shabby. But how many people out there would hold a human skull in their hand? How many people would work with, an animal part, And then the type of personality there, it becomes lessened. And then all of a sudden you're in a niche group of people that are like, I bleed on the earth and I work with ox tongue and I hold a human skull in my hand in reverence of my ancestors, And then the boundaries there, there's boundaries there that need to be traversed. And, but it's sacred work. Any bone work is sacred work. People are like, oh my God, witches and bones. It's so stereotypical. There's a reason why witches work with bones. There's a very good reason why we work with bones. A bone is the inner landscape of a creature that once lived. And when I say creature, I'm talking about human being as well. It's the inner landscape. It holds the essence, the memory, the vibration, the resonance of whoever it was, whatever flesh encased that bone. And when you work with bone, I just said that I worked with Raven for a banishing that I did recently. Raven is my totem, and Raven is a watchful creature, watchful particularly against magic. And because I was working a banishing on magic to witch there, I wanted the watchful eye of the totem. I wanted my war deer. I have a shamanic drum which I made myself, during a shamanic workshop with a beautiful lady in the Daintree. And, that's a war deer. So I work with that energy, and that's the skin, the hide of that creature. And it's all relevant. I work with green ant because they are in masses here. And so these natural objects, they hold the energy of that creature, and if you are respectful and you can direct that energy, then you can make it work for your benefit. So there's a reason why a lot of witches work with bones, because it's unbiased. The spirit of a creature is unbiased. You connect with that spirit. It's not like a human being, a friend. It can be flaky. You're going to meet me to help me with this couch and move it? No. Yeah, I'll be there. Where are you? You're supposed to be, I'm sick. Unreliable. Human beings are unreliable. An animal is not unreliable.
Right.
And so we work with the bones of animals.
And when I think of the bones of animals, I think of the foundation. I mean, which is sort of what you were saying, the foundation, the thing that sort of everything else is around that core of the physical core of that animal, that creature. And it's funny you brought up bones, because just what's today? Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, I was gifted this beautiful deer skull with the antlers, and it's beautiful. Wow. And I can't wait to work with it, because I have this fascination recently with bones, just bones. Show me the bone and I'm there. And And I feel like it's that working with the foundation of that which it belonged to, the idea of, you know, once a part of something, always a part of something, and connecting with the energy and the vibration and the spirit of that animal, that creature.
It's exactly right. It's animism, isn't it? It's animism. It's working with the sentient energy of any object. You know, and it's one of those important things to consider in protective magic is when you're working protective magic, whatever you're using in your protective magic needs to resonate with you. If bones resonate, then go with that. If flowers resonate, then go with that. There's incredible flowers there that can really guard and can really protect. There's some incredible healing plants out there as well. When we look at the green world, you know, from my eyes at least, we're looking at the green world through a lens of plant allies. When I look at the animals of our beautiful world, I look at them as animal allies. Nothing is out there to hurt me. Within the realms of common sense, I'm not going to jump in a tank with a great white or a crocodile, am I? No. I understand that instinct, basic instinct in creatures plays a huge part, right? But nothing is out there to hurt me, and knowledge is very, you know, and upskilling and learning and amassing knowledge on these subjects are incredibly important to be able to practice effective magic. And the one type of magic that you want to be able to practice effectively is protection magic, because protection magic is at the root of every other magic.
Yep.
If you're casting a spell for love, you need to have your protection in place. If you're casting a spell for money, you need to have your protection in place. This is why witches cast magical circles, why they call corners if you're Wiccan in that regard. It's why you set a parameter of green. I throw herb in every direction, dirt, flower. I amass, I create a circle for myself. I call in my guardians, my spirit totems. You know, this is why we do this. But that protective magic is at the foundation. If you don't have a really strong foundation, then anything that you build upon that in a magical sense or in a practical sense is going to be very wonky. And it will fall. And you're going to have to do it again. You're going to have to do it again. So you may as well learn how to do it right the first time so that you don't have to do it again. The only time, if you set a great witch's bottle out in your yard, you only have to do that again when you move to a new place. You don't ever have to touch that again. You do that right, you do that perfectly, and it stays in place for all of time.
Right.
And you had sound effects there.
Right. That's exactly.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's exactly how I feel too. I put there's one witch's bottle in that yard, and there is no need to redo it. It's there, it's going to be there, and it'll be there even after I leave, because I'm not digging that up. That's staying there.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, actually. I'm really interested in apothecaric magic. I like concealed objects. I love that for protection magic. You know, you can have a charm on you. You can turn amulets and talismans. I'm wearing multiple amulets, multiple talismans on me. In my space here, there's so many of them. Right? But I love it. I love this idea of concealed objects in a protective sense. And the witch's bottle is, quite frankly, the pinnacle of protective magic for me. Like, nothing looks as fucking cool as a really cool witch's bottle. And I tell you what, to make one, you get to experience what it is like to be the wild witch. You get to step into that archetype of pissing in a bottle, of you know, of putting hair and just all the ghastly aspects, and there's some beautiful stuff in there as well. And you put it all in that jar, which you will decorate in any manner that you feel should be decorated, but you'll make it look amazing. And then you'll go out into your front yard or your backyard. I prefer the front. I don't know about you guys. I prefer the front yard.
I don't have a front
boundary
yard. I have no front yard, so it had to go in the back.
Yeah, so depending on circumstances then in that case, and taking a shovel and just like digging into the ground, it's so active. It's so active and activating. You know, my poor neighbours, they suffer at the hand of my drum and my witch's gusto. And, you know, when I cast my banishing only a couple of days ago, it was loud and I was obnoxious about it because I had to be. I I'm not going to go out there and practice big magic with a little voice, am I?
No.
No, you kind of need to, well, you know, when it comes to magic, you kind of need to unleash the inner witch, and that's a tricky business. That's the tricky business. You expose yourself as a magical practitioner when you unleash the tricky business. Now, for me personally, it's school holidays, so a lot of people go away for school holidays. So the only people that really heard me were the neighbours on this side who already know I'm a weirdo, and the neighbours on that side who already know I'm a witch. So across the road, everyone, the place was vacant, and I live in a cul-de-sac, which, by the way, cul-de-sacs are great places for nasty energy to pool. Yeah. So when you think about it that way, I live in a cul-de-sac, so I did my magic outside, and you know, and I was very, very loud, very loud. I came inside to bang my drum, and the windows started to quiver. My glass windows started to rattle because I sounded like Xena, you know, like a crazy person, because I'm projecting my inner energy outward. You know, if I'm going to shield, I have to project out my life force in part, you know, not all of it. I'm channeling from the earth. I don't use my own life force for this, obviously, because I would die. But I'm harnessing from the earth. I'm harnessing from the spirit of my drum. I'm harnessing from the bones and the crystal and all of that I have on my person at that time, and I'm projecting out. And to do so, you can't go like this. I now protect you. Protected. Nobody hears you. The spirits don't hear you. The earth is not going to hear you. Your guides aren't here. Your deity's not going to hear you. You can sit there in as much silent prayer as you want. You know, send out your light. Make sure that they're attracted to you. But then when they are around and the work needs to be done, then speak your truth out loud, authentically, for anybody to hear. It's confronting, isn't it? Protective magic can be very confronting. And the more confronting you are, the better your magic is going to be. The louder you are, the more obtuse you are in that setting, that's it. And you know what? Like I was saying, this is something that you only need to do once. You do that one time in your yard, people will know not to knock on your door. It will protect you. They'll know she's a weirdo. She buried something in the front yard. Someone's going to think it's a body. Another person's going to think it was a dead animal. Everyone's going to have their opinions of what you buried, right? But nobody's going to come knocking on your door willy-nilly. So it works a charm. It works a charm.
I agree. Renee, what were you going to say earlier?
Oh, we just had a couple of questions.
Okay.
One of them was, do any of you use geomancy in your shielding?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do any of you use geomancy in your shielding?
Depends on where I am. I'm in Australia, right? And in Australia, if I was to work with the landscape, it's done so very differently. We do a welcome to country. So it's an extension of geomancy to welcome to country. So no matter which geographical location you are, the Indigenous people of Australia do a welcome to country, whereby they enter a landscape that is foreign to them, that's not theirs, and they introduce themselves via lineage to the spirits of that land. And they take into consideration where the serpent pools, where the energy of the serpent is pooling in the ground. So Australian Aboriginals work with the concept of the rainbow serpent. This is not unlike traditional witchcraft that work with the serpent energy as well, the scroll or something to that regard. They harness the sprawl in traditional Cornish witchcraft, particularly through the use of, you know, attentive work and perception. Their the staff of a cunning woman or a peller. And Australian Aboriginals are known for their sticks and their spears as well. And they work with that sacred landscape energy, the rainbow serpent that snakes through all of things. But to use geometric symbols and to understand the concept of geometric symbols that sit on top of ley lines and things of that nature, not something that I personally use.
Yeah, I don't use it either. I mean, yeah, no, I don't. Do you, Renee?
Yeah, I do specifically because I'm on a ley line. I'm also, you know, like we talked earlier, I'm on the creek bed that's Leonard Houston. But also, like, the actual creek is behind my house. But I work with, specifically in my craft, specifically with the land because it's very rich. And it's, in a way, its energy can be very loud. And it would be almost wasteful, at least for me, to not, you know, tap in everything that's around here. So I also like to use it when I'm out in the trails for divinatory divinatory purposes to kind of like read the landscape, especially after a huge rain and no one's been out there yet, and kind of seeing the lay of the land and see what the messages are there.
Yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
It is. Yeah.
I think working with the land is really important, you know, being able to pull up energy from specific spots. I don't work with geomancy in a more structured sense. You know, there's a movement of those who work geomancy, sacred geometry embedded into the landscapes. That's not something that I personally do, but you know, I'm an earth-centered witch, so I work with my land. Of course I work with my land. The greenery that's around my home at the moment, because I've lived here for a couple of years, I do a lot of magic here. My coven does meetings here. I raise energy, I cleanse, I consecrate, I do a lot of work here. So the energy around, the greenery around has taken the shape, and I call her my Lady of Leaves. So she's the Empress of Green for me. So she's taken on an entire archetype for me. The land that I'm on expresses itself. If I let it, if I do nothing to my land, vines will crawl all over my house and they'll guard my front door. I have pictures of this. It just grows naturally. Things spring out of the ground because I honor it. I'm always feeding the earth. Always feeding the earth, throwing wine, throwing salt, leaving offerings to the fae in my backyard, especially with my children. I think it's a good habit to get them into leaving offerings out in the yard. And we don't have half the issues. We have an overgrown garden, and we don't have half of the issues that the people in this street have with snakes, with rats, with just nasty little creatures. We just don't. We don't have any of those issues at all. So it works, you know, working with your land in a protective sense, working with your land full stop. It works in a protective sense is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, I find, at least we've been in the house that we rent. It's not our home. It's not our land. And we've been here almost 10 years now. And the first few years I found that it was wonderful because we have a very small backyard, but the place we lived prior to this, we had no yard. So this was a little step up from what we had. We had no yard, now we have a little backyard. But I found in recent years that it's not enough for me anymore, and that I feel very stifled in a city, a very urban environment. You know, the city hospital is 3 blocks west from me, and the neighbors are too close now, and I feel very stifled and choked off from the earth, and I'm craving more, which is why we're hoping to move somewhere soon, so that I can feel free again. So it's almost like I've outgrown my space, my place, and I'm seeking, and I'm feeling very suffocated. So unfortunately, I feel like there could be more, and I almost feel stunted in my own growth because of the lack of nature, you know.
Yeah, it's a thing, isn't it? It's a thing. I mean, I live on a 1,000 square meter property, right? That's big by modern standards, where most Australian house blocks these days are around the 400 square meter. They'll give you a little front yard, a little backyard, that kind of business. We have a lot of, a space, particularly in an urban setting. So like I said, I've got neighbors, but they're not, if I open up the window, I can't see my neighbor.
I can see into my neighbor's kitchen.
There you go. Like, we don't have that. That's not an issue here for me. But that pisses me off still. It still pisses me off because, and that's why I go camping so much. I go out to national parks to camp and to really ground, because there's no people around to fuck with my energy, and then I get to sit there naked in a stream and just wash away the urban nature of my existence and all that, accumulated energy that you sort of like suck up because you're just brushing up against people's auric field all day long, every day, and you just get to go and be. And so one of my huge callings is to live on a property where I can't see a neighbor and where I can scream at the very top of my lungs and nobody can hear me, which might seem scary to some people, but it's my bliss. It's where I'm heading. And if I can do that in a yurt, oh my God, I'd be like, mama's home. Mama's home. Oh, but it's so good. It's so good to think about these things. It's so good to think about how your energy reacts to your environment, because that's part of how you protect yourself, right?
Exactly.
You know that if you're feeling, you just said that you're feeling like you've outgrown your space. You've outgrown your space. Your energy is already wanting to spill out onto everywhere else. So you work with that energy, in that context. Like, you're protecting that energy that spills out onto everyone else. You're protecting your poor neighbors from this witch energy that's, coursing through their house, because I'm arrogant. People who know me really well know that I'm arrogant, and I happen to believe that those who walk a spiritual path have a bigger aura, got much more energy coming out at us, because we're looking at directing that energy. We're working with energy. We're channeling energy. We're working with deity. You have a strong connection with deity, and you're in the shopping center, and you have a strong connection with deity, and you're in a shopping center with other people. What are they feeling around you? You're coursing around. I don't work with the Morrigan, but imagine you're working with the Morrigan and you're walking through a shopping center. That can't be a pleasant experience for people who are brushing up against her unknowingly, taking all of that energy into that space. And so you have to shield against yourself as much as you shield against other people, because it's just a matter of respect. You don't walk into somebody's house with your shoes on. You take your shoes off and you walk into their home. It's like wiping your feet. So it's respectful towards other people. Protection magic is both parts. You're shielding yourself, but you're also protecting the person on the other side of that shield. You do so in good conscience, because you're not looking to injure. Well, not unless you're feeling like you're attacked. If you're feeling like you're attacked, then you go on the offensive, and there's nothing to say that you shouldn't or that you can't. But for the most part, when you're just putting up simple protection magic, you're not looking to injure another person. You're looking to put up a good, strong shield with respect for whatever comes around that side. You don't say, let the person that comes near the shield die. You don't say that. You say, let the person that comes to this shield recognize the fact that there is a strong boundary in place, and that no unwanted energy should traverse this boundary, and let them turn around and go back. It's not to harm, it's to protect, right? And so you do it in a two-part system. Just as you need intention and action, you need the shield, and you need, the good intention that goes beyond that shield as well. And it's all relevant, it's all relevant in protection magic.
I agree. What's next, Renee?
We're not going to get to them all, but
yeah, because we only have like 7 minutes left.
Yeah, one of them's going to be, question, I'll let you pick: blood magic with protection magic, or spirit work with ancestors, including invocation. Which one would you rather do? Because we only have time for one.
So what's the thing with the blood magic with the blood with the what was that?
Including blood or blood magic with protection magic, or like protections during spirit work, which includes invocations.
Ooh, well, they both mean the same thing. If you're working with blood, you're working with the spirit of your ancestors anyway, right?
Yeah, right.
Bing, bing, bing,
so,
bing, bing, bing.
So blood magic is the same thing. So you call on your legacy and the legacy of your line, your blood lineage. So protective magic is blood magic is very, very effective in protection magic, because you're calling on all of the ancient within you. So you're the amassed spirit energy. There's chaos in my house.
I agree. And I mean, the high, at least for me, when I did the witch bottle, I included, blood magic in that when I crafted that and created that. I mean, it just seemed a natural thing for me to do. And I would imagine it's sort of like a pull to do that anyway. I mean,
and you wouldn't want to work with spirit anyway. That doesn't, also, to be clear for anyone that may not be too into this aspect of it, but just because you're working with spirits doesn't mean you actually need to do blood magic. It's kind of
right.
It's like all tigers are cats, but not all cats are tigers. It's the fact that when you do blood magic, you will call upon all ancestors, all the people that were involved in the creation of you, which is a lot of people if you go back in time. Now, you working with spirits, using the damn circle, if you're going to actually casting a circle, if you're going to work with actual spirits. in the aspect if you're going to do an invocation, well, there's a lot of protection in several different layers you probably should do if you're going to invite something to physically house within you. But I mean, they're both correlated as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, no, I think that blood magic and ancestral work, it's really, really, it's powerful magic. It's powerful stuff. Dare I say, I'm going to say something controversial because
Do it.
I haven't yet. And so I think women are better at blood magic than men because we bleed every month. Up until a point in time, we don't have to rip into our flesh in order to achieve this. We have blood that is gifted from the goddess to work with. We have it. It's not something that we need to induce each and every time. This is not to say that if a man has access to blood, he's not as good. But I just think that naturally, it's our duty. It's our duty to bleed on the earth. When I say bleed on the earth, in a sense, it's to bleed. It's to put your blood into the earth. You know.
Yeah, and then, I mean, that makes sense to me. The fact that, I mean, and I know what's going to come up is that there are women who have had issues with their cycle from birth, or who, you know, and I understand that. I definitely understand that, and I don't want to discount that. But I think a female who was born and had in you know, overall well-being and health. I mean, in our most healthy state, there is a cycle that a woman would go through. So we are familiar with blood showing up on a regular basis, whatever that means for you. And I agree that men just don't have that connection to that. I mean, we bleed and we're like, oh, yep, we're bleeding. A man would bleed that much on a monthly basis, he'd be freaking out, I think. You know, it's not a natural state for him to be in, right?
That's exactly right.
But for that cycle, what was the original substance before it became what is the monthly thing at this point? It's literally the lining of your uterus shedding. So that in itself was supposed to have the purpose of being a protective shield for an unborn child.
True.
That's exactly right.
Correspondence, maybe, I would say, yeah, a pretty obvious one. There's nothing more needing of protection in an unborn child. So
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I also think too that those, you know, it's important to recognize that I'm not saying that a man is better or less, or that a woman who doesn't experience her cycle is better or you know, or worse off. I just think that we all have our roles to play. Our anatomy, our physiology, our spirit, the soul that embodies it. We all have a role to play. There will be people. Hang on, Baba. Can you cry in a little bit? We all have our roles to play. There will be some people that are incarnated in this world and they are phenomenal at protective magic. There will be others that are phenomenal at love magic. There will be others that are phenomenal at spirit work. You know, we all have our roles to play. I think that protective magic. Yes, it's got a smarty in there. I think protective magic is something that we all need to learn, at least on a very basic scale. But there will always be someone who is really, really good. That is their skill. That's what they're adept at. And then you'll get your all-rounders who are pretty damn good at most things, you know, and that's something to consider as well. So if you don't fall in the construct of, you know, of this person with perfectly functioning anatomy that, you know, that can bleed on the earth for the purpose of working blood and protective magic, or blood and spirit magic, for instance, that's not your calling in this lifetime. Your calling could be something that's far more profound than that, you know. No one's ever hindered or handicapped in the world of magic. We all have a very real purpose, and that's something that I just want to say. Full stop.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. My clock chimed, and it's 9. The kind of rhyme. Thank you, Avalon, for being a guest and spending the hour with us talking about
thanks for having me.
magic. Thank you so much. Renee, thank you as usual. You're wonderful. And everybody, in the chat. Thank you so much for participating and keeping the chat lively. I'm going to go back and read when we're done here because I could not keep up whatsoever. Next week, October 5th, we have Lady Ambrosia, and she's going to be discussing with us moving and dismantling your sacred space. So if you are considering moving or have moved and are concerned about, you know, how you should dismantle your sacred space and what you should do in the new place to set it up, we're going to be talking all about that next week with Lady Ambrosia. So be sure to tune in. And I did not write down who's the week after that, so you'll just have to wait and see. I want to thank my official sponsors of the Sacred Circle, Karen Gerlinger and Michael Redden. Thank you very much for being official sponsors. If you're interested in finding out how you can be a sponsor of the Sacred Circle, go to Lunar Wisdom's Patreon page. Check it out. For just $1 a month, you will get access to 4 exclusive videos for patrons only. It is a series called The Quest Within, where I have conversations on all types of spiritual matters with Alex. And you can have access to the archives if you pledge now $1 a month. Check that out on Lunar Wisdom's Patreon page. So that wraps it up for another week. I look forward to talking to you all next week and joining in on the conversations with Lady Ambrosia. So until next time, bye. I love you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, motherfuckers.
Renee.